Hello and welcome to Model Kit Beginner. Here we are with part 2. Again, we need some light on the subject. Here we go on part 2 of my video build of the Fiat Assetto Corsa. In this part we just have a quick look at the front suspension, how to get that together, couple of tricks, couple of mistakes which you can see, which I will call out so you don't make them as well once you build yours. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump right in. Right, we start off with the steering gear in the front. You've seen I've assembled that already. This is the famous hot screwdriver method. I think later on I'll have a sample for you for that, because there are a couple more instances where we need to use that method, where you do use no glue but just a hot screwdriver to get your stuff together. I also got the steering column together, which you can see right over here. Here we go. And apart from that, let's see where we're going with this. Right, now we go on with the front suspension. There are some other parts which needs to be assembled. Let's do that. There you go. There are some of the parts which are cut off the tree, so we just sandpaper them. Here we go, right over there. That's where I am. So I'm sure you have seen people sandpaper before, so that's what I'm going to do. Just cut off what needs to be cut off and make sure the loops are nice and round. Right, here we go. We have glued all these suspension parts together, the smaller suspension parts. Now we're going to have a go at the shock absorbers, which have a real spring in them. So let's see how that goes. So cut the parts off the sprue. Exciting stuff, riveting. Here we go. And there's another part which I'm missing, the stem. Yeah, there it is. Here we go. So let's put that together, see how that goes. A little test fit. It's not too bad. That looks all right to me. And then this obviously will then go in there. Oh, wait a minute. Something which we want to sandpaper off first. Here we go. Now, for my next trick, I need to get a spring out of this package. So just try to open it up here. We first tried to do it as a civilized method, and then once we had enough of that, we just rip it open. That's it. There's the point. We have reached it. Just rip it open. Here we go. Now, let's see what we have in here. There are quite a few springs and stuff in here. Pipes, all that kind of stuff. So, see which one I need. So I go in there and get one of those. There are 4 of those springs in there. This is how I know. That's the only one we have 4 of. That's how I more or less deduce from that this will be the right spring. Hey, there she goes. Right, now this spring needs to go in here. If I manage to pick it up. Here you go, and then the stem or piston, if you want so, goes in here, and then this one goes in there. Yeah, ping, ping, ping. I tell you what, that spring I picked up quite a few times. Not going to put you through that watching me picking it up 15 times. Let's move forward to the point where I actually managed to glue it together. So here we go, all very, very fiddly. Put that together, then I'll try to put that on. Here we go. Got it. It's there. So what we do now, yes, it's working. We take a little bit of glue on the seam. Here you go. It's pretty cool. So I'm just holding it there for a minute, and then I will obviously attempt to put a clamp on this. Here we go. Make sure it's on the right spot. And here we go. That's how you put those shock absorbers together. Once it's dry, you just give it a little bit of a sandpaper, and it is ready to install. Right, so now what you see here is some fancy taping in order to get the interior and the bottom of this plate black. And here we are. It is ready to go to the spray booth. As you can see, I've super glued my little stick here on the inside, there underneath the seat where nobody will see it. And we go over to the garage and have it spray painted flat black. And here we are, through the miracle of editing, it comes back spray painted. So all we need to do now is get rid of the tape, and we will then reveal if my taping was more or less successful. There are certain places where it is more important than others. For example, you see on the back firewall might not be as precise. Not important, nobody will see that. That is not a place where you can actually see, so that's fine. So lots of these places you actually won't see. We do it anyway because it's there. Obviously the firewall needs to be white, we know that, so that's basically the reason why we taped it off. Right, then obviously we need to do the front as well. Oh yeah, there's a small one at the bottom which needs to go. Yeah, there it is. Alrighty, yeah, that looks a little better. Okay, then we do the same on the front. There we go. Yeah, that hasn't come out too bad either. So I like that quite a bit. Let's get rid of the... I'm so sorry. Let's get rid of the old tape. That test should have woken you up. And yeah, that's it. It's black at the bottom. It's black. There will be more of a flat black spray painting going on once the suspension, front suspension and rear suspension have been installed. I will obviously go over. So if it's not quite as black at the bottom as you think it should be, don't worry about that. That'll be alright. Right, now we start adding some suspension parts onto the bottom itself. And as you can see there on the right hand side, I've already added a piece, and we will do the very same on the other side, since it has been painted already. Actually on both sides I've added something, so now another piece goes on, part of the front suspension. Just take half a fine drop of contact glue, not contact glue, instant glue, crazy glue, sea glue, and put it on, bit of kicker, and that's it. All very well. Now we do the same on the other side, and we go from there. Right, now we are dealing with the front leaf spring, which we are just busy in the final paces of cleaning it up, doing again using my UMP soft sander, and now a little bit of a test fitting will be in order to see where it goes and where we need to install it. So make a bit of space, get the bottom plate and take it from there. And you can see there are some parts which I've added already, and there obviously is the gear I was talking about, which helps us with steering, and this obviously needs to be installed as well. So now you will see me poring over instructions and making sure that I don't do it the wrong way. Well, you can see here I've installed the steering box. This is where I'm fiddling now around and try to fit it in. This is a very tight fit, so it took me a while. I'm not going to bore you how long this will take, but yeah, I'll show you the final attempt which eventually worked, and which I successfully then installed the little steering gear. You might want, in hindsight, you might want to add that and attach that before you build in the steering box, but well, then I didn't, so I had to do it the difficult way. So if you do it, attach your steering gear right over here to the steering box before you glue in the steering box. And here we go. It appears I finally got it in. Very, very nice. Yeah, it's a bit of a fiddle, I can tell you. It's not as easy as it looks. I'm sure it looks painful, and you have to be very careful to make sure you get everything in the right place. So also instructions are not very clear on that, so you really have to look twice and use a little bit of your imagination to make sure you get everything in there the way it should. Right. The part which I'm trying to fiddle in here, and I eventually do get it, or fiddled it in, is actually part where the steering gear needs to be connected on the other side. On the one side it's on the steering box, on the other side it just pivots around this particular part, which I put in here, bracket, whatever you want to call it, where it then should be just snip in, which of course it doesn't, but eventually I do get it right. Here we go. And we have it pivoting around there. Right. Then you can take your steering column and then you can adjust a little bit and have that the way you want it. Nice. And here we go. We're getting back to those leaf springs. Just one leaf spring for the entire front suspension. There you go. We just give it a bit of a test fit. Does it go in like that? Oh yeah, that little hub knob there on top actually must go off, otherwise it will not be fitting in. Rather, be safe than sorry. So I cut it off, I'll give it a bit of a sand, and then we'll try to fit it back in. So here we are. Yeah, that looks alright. So what we're going to do now is give it another test fit. Ah, that's much better. Here we go. Now it's in place. Right, let's get a bit of me super glue, just a tiny droplet onto the ends over there. Here we go, put it back in. Bit of kicker on one side, bit of kicker on the other side. Hold it in for a couple of seconds and you should be good to go. Here we go. That's pretty good. That is that part of the front suspension done. Right, now we're going back to the linkage on the wheel side of things. You see that, you remember we glued those two together. And the reason I go back to this is because I want to show you the method how to get stuff together without glue, but using a heated screwdriver. Here we go, playing with fire. Just use a simple tea light. Take the screwdriver, heat it up. If you think it has been in the fire in the flame long enough, just give it another 30 seconds. Then you get your obviously will be a better way to get this all aligned, but I just did it that way. Obviously in the meantime the screwdriver has cooled down again, but we will get there. Right, just give it a little bit of a press so it doesn't fall out. So what you basically do, you flatten that little stint on top so it doesn't come out again. That's it. It's like a bit of a plastic rivet if you want so. And that's it. And that you do on all sides wherever needed. They're actually indicated in the instruction sheet so you know where and when to do this. Right, then we attach that linkage to the front suspension, and you use these little plastic poles to do so. Just a word of warning, you need to drill these holes a little bit open. It's a bit of a tight fit, so I just took the hand drill and widened it up a little bit. Right, now the same trick applies, heating up screwdrivers right over here, over the candle flame, and then just give it a bit of heat there at the end, so making sure that these little bolts don't come out. Basically rivet them on, and that's it. Then you have done that part, and you have a fully movable front suspension, which is pretty cool. Right, now that we have these in, we obviously need to get in those shock absorbers. Remember those which we put in with the springs in there? Yeah, that one. Right, now watch me to put them in right off camera. No, I actually moved into camera. So there are a couple of points which I need to find, and I didn't first, but there is a little hole there on top where the shock absorber fits right in. So let's go there and try to fiddle it in there. It actually fits in to such an extent that you might want to refrain from gluing it in. I certainly did. Should it later on come out easily, then obviously I'll just give it a drop of super glue on which side it's ever is required. But obviously having this fully movable and unglued is always an advantage. Your real suspension in the car is also not fixed, it's also pivoting around, and obviously we try to achieve the same here as far as possible. Here we go, they're in, working quite nicely, shock absorbers installed. Right, once that is all in place, all the smaller parts have been installed, some more smaller parts, then the wheel linkage needs to be fixed or attached to the steering gear, which obviously is then has been connected to the steering box, as you remember quite nicely. And that's what we're doing now. Same method, heating up the screwdrivers, make sure they're all working together. There you go, you saw my melon here in the way, and that more or less gives you an idea what it looks like. Here we go, it's moving. I don't want to move it too much, just wait for everything to dry and set in place. Right, now the instructions call out to have one half of the drum brakes attached to the axle and then paint the other half, and then it all sounds complicated way of doing things, and I decided to not to do it that way, but glue the drum brakes together, front and brake, separately, paint them separately, and then just attach them to the axle afterwards. It also will be much easier to make sure that all four wheels reach the ground at the same time. Here we go. So that's what I'm doing now, just giving a bit of a test fit. These are front drum brakes, and put a bit of glue on and then we'll just glue them together and take it from there. Right, here we go, just one example. I mounted a little bit here on my tweezers, just give it a little bit of the Tamiya extra thin. Put the top part on, here we go, put them all together, then put that little clamp on at the bottom, make sure that one seats in place, and then obviously I do that all off camera, so that's why I'm telling you that, and then we'll put it to one side. Right, now for my next trick I will glue together the air heater pipe right over here. It's one of the two, I'm sure. And here we go. And once we have done that, the engine will be next, and we will glue that together in part 3. Well, what we will do is we will cut the parts off, glue together what can be glued together, mount them all, have them primed, have them painted, and then assemble it. But that will be all happening in part 3. So here I am just gluing that heater pipe or air pipe together, just barely on the camera. I really need to get used to it, how to get stuff on the camera, because I'm getting new glasses in 2 weeks. My glasses are in such a state that I always need to be close to my eyes. Right. Anyway, it all fits. We put a little bit of glue on there. There we go. Just put it on both sides so we get that seam nice and close together. It's always difficult to sand these buggers. Here we go. Put a couple of clamps on it, and then we will put it to one side, and we'll get to the engine. Alright, just gluing it inside. Don't want to put too much glue on the outside, because then you have to clean it up again. That obviously helps a lot if you can glue from a side which nobody will see. There you go. Got the clamps ready. Get it clamped, and then we'll put it to one side. And I'll see you all again in part 3. And here you are. That was it. Hope you enjoyed that. Did the front suspension. Next will be the engine. We'll put the engine together in part 3, so that will be quite something. We'll cut out all the parts, glue together what we can glue together. We'll prime the lot, and we will paint the lot, and then we will glue it back together and assemble the engine. A little bit of hand painting, a little bit of detail painting, and we will be ready to rock and roll. Right, I'll see you then in part 3, and thanks for watching. Thanks for going through all the way to the end, and have a lovely week. Greetings from Cape Town. Cheers.